Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's webinar, Crisis on Tour. My name's Marcus Vaughan, and I'm your host for today's session. We're in good company, though, this morning. Joined with me is Bryony Morgan, Resilience Manager of RiskLogic, who has over 10 years' experience in assisting and prepare for and respond to major disasters in the field, both at your time at RiskLogic and also in your previous life when you were an officer of the Royal Australian Army Medical Corps. Also joining us today is Leon Israel, who's a client success manager within our Catalyst Technologies business, who aside from knowing crisis management very well from his time as working as a resilience specialist in the RiskLogic business, is now transitioned to become part of our, tech wizardry team in terms of assisting clients get the most of our technology platforms such as CQCommand. Leon, Bryony, good morning.
Good morning, Marcus. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
No worries. Before we get started, everyone, just a little bit of information about today's agenda and the format. So the whole session in total is going to go for 30 minutes. First and foremost, we'll be running through a brief presentation covering off crisis on tour. What does a crisis look like in the field? We'll be looking at what does crisis ready look like and looking at some of the critical success factors in getting it right. We'll also be running through a demonstration of how our technology platform CQCommand works in the field. Following that, we're going to be running questions and answers for about 10 minutes. Feel free during the presentation, if you have any questions, essentially type them into the Q&A panel. If you can't see the Q&A panel, just move your mouse around on the screen a little bit. You'll be able to type in those questions. We'll get to as many of those questions as we possibly can in the final 10 minutes. And then if we don't get anything to it during the session, we'll take it offline and come back to you directly. Finally, we will be recording this session. So we'll be sending out a link after the session to essentially give you the opportunity to go through it, either share or watch at your own leisure. But to kick it off, Bryony, you've got a lot of experience in assisting both planning and responding to events. I know you've been involved in some pretty major disasters and assisting organisations respond to major disasters, things like cyclones in Australia, but also the disasters that we had in Vanuatu and Fiji on that front, also dealing with mass casualties. So from your basis and your experience, what does a crisis look like in the field? What are the typical challenges organisations do face when they're far from home?
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, look, unfortunately in the world right now, it's not a question of if, but when something will happen. And there's several challenges that I've experienced and I've seen and are seeing across the industries in terms of crisis management in the field. I'm going to touch on three of them now. The first one being problem ownership and working with authorities. Now, particularly in the travel industry or for organisations like universities who may undertake travel regularly, there's a necessity to understand what the on-the-ground response will look like, wherever that might be in the world. And part of this is a necessity not only to work alongside emergency response organisations like police or ambulance or firefighters, but also potentially government agencies who may become involved. I'll use DFAT as a good example here. So it's really important for organisations to understand what part of the problem unfolding belongs to you and what part of the problem is owned by somebody else, another organisation like DFAT, like the police. Really important to understand where your responsibility ends and where it starts, and therefore this will drive where you focus your resources and, more importantly, your time. You can risk undermining your own efforts and ultimately the safety of your people if you try to influence what you can't actually change, which also highlights the need to understand what that on-the-ground response looks like from those emergency response organisations' perspective. What part of the preparedness that we talk about involves having the conversations with those organisations, those emergency services, those government authorities, and finding out or working out who in your organisation has the authority to actually speak to them and manage that response in line with them. The second one that we see is the question of duty of care. Where does your duty of care end? What if people on the ground at the incident scene under your command actually refuse medical treatment, or that they even get arrested in a foreign country? What does that look like? So as I've said before, every situation is different. You can't template what the legal situation will be. So it's so important to have that legal advice and even HR involved right from the very start of you beginning to manage an incident. The third one that I'll talk about is emotion. Now, emotion can be too much and it can also be too little. So what we've seen is that when someone on the team becomes overly emotional, their ability to remain objective and make sound decisions becomes compromised. So these reactions are human. They're not bad, but it is so important to be able to recognize them and manage them. And this is one reason why having a plan is so important, because it provides clarity in what can be a highly emotive situation. Conversely, on the flip side, also seeing the detrimental effects of having a lack of emotion, what that can do. It's so important to manage the welfare, not only of your team members, but also other staff within the organisation and other affected stakeholders that might be involved. Potentially that staff member on the ground has just dealt with something that's highly traumatic that they've never experienced anything like before. So how are you as an organisation going to look after them when they're potentially isolated from your immediate support networks?
Does that sometimes turn into a situation if you identify someone who may be affected too much and their emotional state is not sound for crisis decision making, that they may be somewhat removed or parked from the crisis management team?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first questions that we teach our teams to ask is everybody okay? And that's a really important first up question. And it comes down again to that preparedness. People within your team have to have the confidence to put their hand up and say, I'm not okay, I need some additional support. And then your responsibility as a crisis management team to remove them from the situation, to allow that sound decision making to continue, but also give them the support and the resources that they need so that their welfare is looked after.
Very good. I don't think anyone can really argue with wanting to avoid, or at least be in a position to be able to manage a situation that's very fluid and challenging. So with, I guess, those challenges in mind, what does crisis ready look like? What can organisations do to, I guess, get prepared?
Yeah, fantastic. Look, 3 key elements that I'll talk about today. The first being an ability to conduct an initial assessment and then rapid notification against the organisation's predetermined thresholds. The second one, ongoing accurate assessment. And this is so important because as a situation is unfolding, you need to maintain a single source of truth. You need to know exactly what is fact and what is not, whilst you've got information flowing in from multiple different sources that may be fact, that may be fiction. Because what this does, this single source of truth will actually focus all your actions towards managing the incident or preventing it from escalating further. And the third one really is about communications. And by communications, I'm talking both internal and external communications. They need to be rapid, they need to be clear, and they need to be concise. So your crisis management plan needs to enable you to have this ability. So all of this, I keep coming back to this word preparedness. All of this is underpinned by preparedness. It's understanding what you'll be expected to do, but also what the responsibilities of others are within your organisation and externally, like I mentioned before, police, firefighters, DFAT. Having a structure in place will build confidence across your entire organisation that you do have the capability to manage something when things do go wrong. So first and foremost, it comes down to having a plan that can be easily interpreted and easily followed. If you're not in the room or if you're not around when something happens, you need to be sure that someone can pick up that plan and follow it. And this is why we say having a step 1 is very clearly defined is very important, because this ultimately will focus the team. Familiarization and confidence with the plan, with the process, is built through ongoing training and exercising. You can never predict every single situation. You can't predict the environment or situation that an event will occur in. But what you can do is be familiar with the process, be familiar with the plan, trust that it will lead you to the actions that you need to take.
Great, excellent. Leon, to you, we've just heard a lot about, I guess, the challenges that organisations face when they're managing crises in the field, both at home and also when they're away. Technology is with us. It's not going away. Perhaps you can actually take us through how technology, and CQCommand in particular, can support organisations to, I guess, manage situations as they unfold in the field.
Definitely, thanks. And I'd like to hammer in on 3 particular areas of managing a crisis that CQCommand can definitely address. It's around proactively managing your events via an early incident assessment and getting that team up and ready and managing the event to stop it from getting any worse. building situational awareness from a single source of truth, allowing you to make clear and informed decisions in a timely manner. And also the ability to communicate effectively, but quoting from what Bryony just said, concise messaging, but also being able to get messages back into the system, get some information, help refine that information you've been building earlier, and get responses back into the team. CQCommand, as I said, can address all three of those areas. Being a web-based tool, doesn't matter where the team is. If you've got 2 people in one city, 2 people in another country, someone at home, it's happening out of hours, one person can do an initial assessment, get the team together, jump on, see the same picture, contribute together, and start getting things back to a situation of normality. How we do that? First thing we would do is conduct an incident severity assessment. Now, we've built this off a risk logic methodology of 5 key questions around people, infrastructure, IT, reputation, or outside of your control, i.e. natural disaster, severe weather. Now, all 5 of these questions in CQCommand are very configurable. So if your organization has some refined questions already, you can align this to that process. We ask the user simple questions of, is it likely to be impacting that area? Maybe or definitely, and for how long? And that will start to drive a suggested action on what the team should do. If we hit that top threshold of getting the team together, we activate our team. Now, teams can be preloaded. We can have primary and secondary people assigned to those roles. We have the ability to send a message out to those teams to say, we're aware of this situation and you're needed to manage this event. As the event starts progressing, we start talking about that single source of truth. So being able to share from one piece of information. Now, we live in a day now where we've got mobile phones, email, news sources online, family and friends who are in the area text messaging us, letting us know. So we're getting slammed with information. And the challenge we're faced with is how do we do something tangible but make sure everyone has access to all the information they need. We address this through our whiteboards built into the tool. And now we like to categorize this information into 2 categories of facts and assumptions. Now we can, from here, every team member can contribute. It updates in real time and they can start commenting on that information to start making decisions.
So yeah, this is exactly, it leads us back to that single source of truth that I spoke to before. So that situational awareness across the team, no matter where they are, no matter what time zone, no matter what country they're sitting in, they all have access to the same information because this is what will drive your actions to manage the situation.
Definitely. So from here, I might have added this piece of information, but Bryony, Marcus, anyone who's in my team and where they are in the world can add to that and start doing something with that information. The other tool we've got here is our task board. So we talk about organizations of varying size. So you might have a crisis team of 2 or a crisis team of 20. In all these situations, it's important to start delegating tasks out to people who are on the ground. So if that's your tour or your excursion leaders out in the field, if it's people in another business, people in other companies or organizations going through the same crisis, here we can create a task, allocate it to an individual who's both inside or outside the organization, and CQCommand will send that description or that task request to that recipient and allows the team to actually track the progress of that over time.
So importantly, in organisations like tour companies or education providers that do send people out on the ground, you might have a tour leader responsible for up to say 20 people. So this is important because you're essentially empowering that person to not only be the on-the-ground eyes and ears, but also manage the situation. So be that emergency response, but also notify and provide information up to the crisis management team.
I think about that from an education perspective. I mean, we've got teachers and coaches who aren't necessarily crisis managers dealing with pretty volatile situations in the field. I guess that's putting them in a position of having good practice tools available.
Exactly right. And it really is a simple, practical way that they can get the information out, but at the same time, focus then their actions on that emergency first response, which might be actually checking on the welfare of those 20 people that they're ultimately responsible for.
Perfect. The one thing I didn't touch on before is just the ability to, after that team's come together, have a list of some predefined actions that relate to any given event they're faced with, to start working through the event and start those actions from actually flowing out from the team, not just trying to understand what's going on from the get-go. We talked about communication. We're always talking about communication. We've talked about being able to get a clear and concise message out to those impacted by the event. So be that your customers, your students, interested stakeholders, being able to get a clear and consistent message out as fast as possible. So we've built into CQCommand a SMS and email tool. This is all linked through the one environment, so you don't need to leave and go open up a new program or access a new device. Here we can start asking questions or sharing information that we know about. Something that we find really useful or that keeps me up at night when I hear about this is call trees or roll calls. You have the team at home base saying, okay, we need to find out what's happening with our customers. Okay, who are our staff on the ground in the region affected? 10 minutes goes by trying to find those details. Getting the information then of all the customers to those people on the ground and starting to track them down one by one. Here we might say, welfare check. We can choose to send this via email, SMS, or both. We can ask the recipients to tap a yes/no link, choose our preloaded contact group of all of the people that are impacted by this particular event, and send. Within a matter of seconds, depending on local infrastructure in the region in question, those recipients have received an SMS and an email, and they have the ability to tap a link and send their answer through.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we do see quite often is that it's very easy to get focused on external communications. You know, everything we see in the media, everything on social media, we're all very aware of how that can impact our brand, our reputation. But what is vitally important is to get those internal communications out as well. Let your staff know what is happening. Let them know that you're managing the situation, and actually ask them to check back in with you to make sure they're okay, because ultimately they may have some critical bits of information that you need. So what this does is it just prompts you to think internally as well, whereas a lot of the time we get focused on that external communication piece.
Exactly right. So from here, very quickly, we've got a snapshot of those that are okay, those that aren't, and those that we're waiting for. Already, we're starting to halve the amount of effort required to find out that critical information and focus our efforts elsewhere. For today, that's my input on how CQCommand can support your teams when you've got people abroad, interstate, out of travel, in that really dynamic, fluid situation.
That's perfect. Thanks very much, Leon. That really concludes the end of our, I guess, the content part of our webinar. Really wanted to move now into the section that is focused on Q&A. So I might just start running through. If you haven't put in your questions yet, please do wave the mouse and enter in the questions you've got. We've actually got quite a few that have come through, so we'll start working through those. First one, we have teams split across numerous locations. How do you start to manage an incident when they're not in the same place? I might start with you, Bryony.
This is absolutely an example of how CQCommand, you can use CQCommand to help manage your situation. Anybody can log on, any member of your team can log on from anywhere in the world, and they can contribute to building that single source of truth and broader situational awareness, as I've mentioned. So in today's digital age, there really is no barrier to being split across numerous locations, and that's certainly something that many organisations have to deal with, just as part of their business as usual.
Leon, do you have anything else you want to add to that from a technology point of view?
Just making sure that it's all in one place, I suppose, is the one challenge that we try to address with CQCommand. Like Bryony said, we do live in a technical age. We have a lot of BAU systems. We have a lot of emergency systems. Making sure you're familiar and it's all coming through the one page, the one instance, the one event, for lack of better words.
So a single source of truth.
Spot on. It's a bit of a repetitive statement, but there's truth to it.
Makes sense. Okay, second question. Does CQCommand replace the need to have a plan?
Interesting question. Technology is very much an enabler, and CQCommand complements the crisis management plans, the processes that we put in place as an organisation. We have seen organisations just use CQCommand, in particular smaller ones. You know, Leon alluded to organisations that might only have 2 or 3 people within the entire structure of their organisation, let alone left to manage a crisis when it does happen. Ultimately, though, having an established plan supported by quality policy and framework is key to embedding crisis management within your organisation.
Okay, Leon, I'm going to put this one to you. Does messaging work overseas?
Yes, it does. So obviously I mentioned there's two forms of communication types that come out of CQCommand. Email, pretty straightforward, but also SMS. So provided you've got their full contact details loaded, and there's a cell network in the country, we have the ability to push messages out to anywhere there is cellular communication.
Cool. And it's been tested and successfully tested?
Successfully tested in numerous situations across the globe. Obviously, as we move into your more unique regions, sometimes there's some variables that pop up, but your major hotspots we've gone through and it all works okay.
Got it. Okay. How often should we be testing our plans? Everyone's busy, hard to get everyone in together at the one spot. Brian, I'm going to put that to you.
Yeah, even more reason to conduct regular testing. So generally, we recommend annual full validation exercising activities training, so once a year. But in the meantime, it can be as simple as conducting an internal recall, testing a dedicated teleconference line or a video link that you may have set up, testing that virtual crisis control centre, noting that it is difficult, absolutely, to get everybody sitting together in one spot. And then what that does is it just provides you the context that when something does happen, it is very unlikely that everybody will be sitting in one place around a boardroom table in an office in a major city waiting for something to happen. So take advantage too of current events that are happening. You take the time to discuss with your team. This could be via email, this could be a phone call. If that was to happen to you, if you were to be impacted by a particular current event or something you see on the news, how would you assess that? And then how would you actually manage that within your organisation? Keep that crisis-ready conversation ticking over in the background.
Great. Okay, our tour group contact details are always changing. How do we keep contact details up to date? I might throw that to you, Leon.
Yep. So CQCommand enables a really simple way to upload contacts en masse. We can do that via way of a simple Excel spreadsheet. So the minute you get your customer data coming through for your tour, just copy that into a spreadsheet and upload it into a contact group with an appropriate name. We also have an API integration. So if you've got an automated customer management system or CRM system, we could explore the ability to automate that process for you as well.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, question here. Does RiskLogic undertake training and exercising, in particular the context of education?
Absolutely. This afternoon, in fact, I'm jumping on a plane, head over to Cambodia to deliver a crisis management training session to a group of travel directors. So we absolutely do. Crisis management training and exercising is one of those things. I talk about preparedness and I talk about validation activities. Absolutely key in building confidence amongst not only your team, but your organisation that you can manage an incident, a business disruptive event when it does happen.
And you've also, Brian, been pretty heavily involved over the past couple of years, in particular with the universities, I understand.
Yes, absolutely. So universities, as we know, they're very complex organisations, but one of the key things that they undertake, a lot of travel, a lot of tours. So there's certainly unique challenges to any organisation when you are managing a situation. And part of what we do is actually, it's not just about having words on a page that you call a crisis management plan. It's all about tailoring that plan to you. It's making that plan suitable, appropriate, and reasonable for your organisation. So this is going to be different. An organisation in the tertiary education sector, for example, is going to be very different to a small tour organisation. But we absolutely understand the need and the necessity to tailor plans to these people.
Cool. We use WhatsApp groups to coordinate our tours. Is there any integration? I'm going to throw that to you, Leon.
Hey, so for WhatsApp, we don't have an exclusive integration at the moment, no. WhatsApp's a fantastic tool for general day-to-day group-based communications, sharing information quickly. Taking aside potential security concerns, we've kept all of our messaging within our environment isolated. Meaning if we need to get other people involved, we do it through standard SMS communications, which is directed to that person. And then any internal stuff is via the users within the CQCommand environment itself. Ooh. That's a clear response for you.
No, that's good. Can I delegate my task to another team member? What if I'm on holidays? I might throw that to you, Leon.
Yes, you can. So twofold. As I mentioned in the task delegation board, we can assign things to people in and outside of the team. However, we can have pre-assigned primary and secondary people. So if I was the crisis manager and Marcus was my 2IC, if I didn't respond, he'd get the notification to get involved, or we can manually reassign it to new people on the fly.
Cool. Okay. Where is the data kept that's in CQCommand?
Thank you. I'll jump in there again. Data for CQCommand, the platform itself is run in our own private cloud, and that's hosted here in Australia. So there's no cross-border communication or transmission of data issues for Australian organisations.
Okay. We're only a small organisation. Will CQCommand work for us?
Absolutely, it will. And I sort of alluded to it a little bit before when I sort of spoke about, does CQCommand actually replace the need to have a plan? So we do have organisations, particularly small ones, that use CQCommand as their primary crisis management response. It works particularly well. So when you're talking crisis management in an organisation of 2 or 3 people, even up to 5, the depth of people, when you lose 1 or 2 of those key people, they may be on the tour themselves, they may be on annual leave, whatever that looks like, you're actually left with a significant loss of personnel in being able to manage a situation. So what CQCommand does is it can actually pull all those tasks in one place, so that no matter how many people you've got online trying to manage this incident, you can see exactly what tasks need to be done, and you can allocate them out to people that you may not have as part of your primary crisis management team as well.
Thanks, Bryony. Does CQCommand integrate with Workday and HR systems, Leon?
From a contact management point of view, we do have an open API, so we can configure it to interact with most day-to-day BAU PeopleSoft style systems, predominantly around HR. Main purpose of that is to keep contact list up to date.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can you configure the incident assessment component?
Yes, you can. Touched on it briefly. All 5 questions within the incident assessments, is this incident so severe we need a dedicated response? Completely configurable, as are the terms related to what your escalation thresholds are. So be that watch and wait, stay alert, or declare an event. You can use whatever terminology suits your team and your organisation.
I think this one's technology focused again. What history reports of what has happened for post review? What's available in CQ?
So we have an incident log built into the tool. So basically at any point throughout an event, if a user marks an item as complete, makes a change, adds someone, sends a message, adds a fact and assumption, changes a fact and assumption, deletes a fact and assumption, all of that is reportable at the end of the day to help guide your post-incident review. And we live in a world of compliance, so we've tried to assist our clients where we can through that process.
Great. I don't have anything currently in place. How much work's required to set up CQCommand?
So I might take this one firstly. This really does depend on the size of your organisation. I'll say that up front. You know, for smaller organisations, having a crisis management plan that can then be complemented by CQCommand is really as hard as it needs to be. For larger organisations, when you're talking crisis management, we're talking embedding into a larger organisational structure, we're talking policies and framework, everything that will help embed and continue, make it a priority for the organisation itself. So it really does depend on the size of your organisation, but that's absolutely where we can come in. And using that assessment, assessing what your needs are, we can develop the right program to fit what you need.
And probably a final question before we close off, just conscious of time. Given that it all depends on technology, if it falls over when there is a loss, how would you manage this?
So that's where we say technology complements having a crisis management plan. So nothing at all can take away from preparedness, preparing your team, training them, exercising the processes, everyone being familiar. That is really what underpins this crisis management and your ability to manage any business disruptive event.
That's perfect.
I just wanted to jump in on the end of that. We do live, we are a resilient organisation. We help organisations survive these disruptive events. We've done everything in our power to make sure CQCommand will always be available to you. Hence why it's a web-based tool. It's not something that's installed on your infrastructure. So if you're going through an IT event, as long as you've got public internet access, you can still access CQCommand.
So good for cyber shutdowns when all systems are locked down, Leon.
Correct. It's accessible on any device that's got a browser from anywhere in the world. It's even been tested behind the Great Firewall of China, for now anyway. So we've done everything we can to make sure it does support you, but as Bryony did say, we would never say rely on this to the nth degree. Make sure you've got your other procedures in place too.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. I'm going to call it there, just conscious of time. Did want to thank everyone for their time today. Any questions left over there, we will come back to you directly. We will be sending out a feedback form after this. Feedback is a gift. We'd love yours, just to make sure that we are honing in the content that we're delivering to you to make sure it's as valuable as it can possibly be. Bryony, Leon, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Marcus.
And everyone out there, thanks again, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you.